All right, we are back. So, hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I hope everybody was doing well. We have a special guest today, our dear friend Ujjwal. He's currently working as a senior software engineer at KittyPay. And welcome Ujjwal. It's really a delight to have you here. And
Thanks,
it
bro.
was a long time coming. I always wanted to invite you. It just couldn't make some time with the travel and everything. I'll let you introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Thanks, Provis. Thanks so much for inviting me. Hi, everyone. I'm Ujjwal. I'm a senior software engineer at KittyPay. I'm what I like to call myself a product-minded software engineer who loves solving problems. Yeah, and I'm like deeply, really interested in quality side of things, not just from like technical level, but also from a UX level. If I'm using a software, if I'm like submitting a form and something in the form is like really bad UX, it sort of really frustrates me. I'm
I
that
like it.
yeah yeah I'm that kind of a guy. I'm like, oh man, it's like I detected that bug in like 5 seconds. Like,
It's like why didn't you test it out?
I mean, they probably tested it out, but maybe they didn't carry user testing. Or like the thing with software is you need empathy. Like you might test it in a very simulated environment, but user might use it in so many different ways. So you need to really go out there and challenge the fact that what you thought would work might actually be really bad. To be really open to that. It's the mindset that I think. Yeah, I think maybe I'm jumping too much
No, no,
already.
no, it's great. Like let's keep it casual. I definitely would love to hear more about it. However, we everybody would love to know about you. We would love to know Ujjwal even more.
Yeah.
So, like maybe let's go into some background and experience from yourself, and then we can delve into technical bits. I could see we would have a really good conversations there. So, could you let us know about your early careers? How did you decide to be in the software engineering? Was it your like quote unquote, I want to become a software engineer, like kind of goal?
Yeah. I think it was a bit of a funny one. So when I think in the school, like ninth or tenth grade, we had a subject for computer science, and there used to be a couple of chapters on programming languages. I think it was
Too basic.
QVC, yeah, that's the one. And I was pretty good at it. Like I was so it was like it was nothing. Like it was just like you just assign variables, you call a function, you for loop, you take inputs. Like it was just like procedural, very basic procedural programming language. I mean, maybe I don't know. QBasic might support more features, but what that like I sort of was pretty good at it, right? But
Yeah.
then when I finished my high school, I didn't actually even know programming was a serious thing at all. I never really looked at it. Like really, I was thinking about doing, I don't know, some sort of an engineering, like aeronautical engineering, maybe. I was thinking
Oh,
of
you
maybe
are you are you are in the aeronautical group as well. So last time I interviewed Sonam, he was there, and
Yeah.
he was like myself. I also wanted to become an aeronautical
Wow.
engineer, but like, oh, my parents like, oh, you can't go to India, you can't leave home, and same for Sonam as well. Now we have three people. I don't know, like I think that was a buzz around when we were growing up, like being an
Yeah.
aeronautical engineer.
Yeah, I just wanted to do something cool. Maybe I don't know. I didn't. To be honest, I didn't really do much research. Probably just found something cool about it. But then one day, my cousins, they had like, so I have a few cousins. Some of them are bit older than me, uh, and then some in the same day trends. They had this idea. Okay, maybe let's just start a business startup. They had some really cool ideas, and then I was like, okay, and then I just started doing it. I just started like writing some PHP, JavaScript, HTML,
Oh
not too much
dang!
CSS. Yeah.
So you
Um,
started programming right after grade 10,
so grade 12. Yeah.
12. Oh,
Yeah.
that's nice. That's nice. I was
Yeah.
exposed to programming after, like, like we were taught programming on school, like Q
Yeah.
basic. Plus two didn't have much programming in it. So I joined NIST just to make sure like I would get to do programming and computer more, but their physical group were somebody who studied physics more, not the computer one.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. When I did my university, I was already like too deep into programming. Like I remember like my first one of my first semester. I think there was like it would start from basic IT, basic computer science, and obviously delved into the microprocessors, embedded systems, things like that, right? But then when
yeah,
I started it, I was already like writing APIs back then,
dang,
and
that's great.
and yeah, and then it was just like a very weird situation because all my friends from college, um, they were still in the college mode, having fun and things
Yeah,
like that, and I was already programming, and so I didn't really I didn't really grow up having not grow up like in
so,
college. I
so
didn't
social.
have not, yeah. It was a talking point. Like I didn't get
I'm
along
getting
well.
this vibe that all of your like friends would ask you to do their assignments and technical projects.
Oh no, yeah. I was
Did you used to do it for them?
No, I was not a nice guy at all. Like I was, I think people probably hated me like growing up.
That's
Like
surprising.
yeah, but I think I only really started to socialize after started working um, in a company. I made some really good friends. I think then when I really started to like hang out with people, even though most of them were a few years older than me. Now thinking about it, doesn't matter. Back then, it was a big deal, like making friends with people like even a couple of years older than you in Nepal. But then I don't know, it just hit, and after that, but in college, yeah, I didn't really made a lot of good friends.
Whoa, that's a drastic thing. I'm surprised to hear this. Like from my perspective, I met you where when you were really nice, like well spoken, and like you have this like positive aura around you, right? Every time people come and talk to you, it's
Wow, thank you.
happy, right? Like you feel happy, like that euphoric, right? You make the situation euphoric, and I can't even imagine you being the jerk nerd. That's so funny to hear. Like,
Yeah,
so like when would like could you tell us more about your personal journey? Like, okay, you did the undergrad or in bachelor's. What did you do after that? Like,
yeah. So I was working like I think the one of the most biggest point of me. So after that startup, I worked in there for like a couple of years. Yeah, didn't really work out well. Made a little bit of money, not that much. So I left it, and then I started working for another company. I also realized that entrepreneurship isn't a thing for me.
mm,
Yeah, I just started working in one. It was called Intercept at that time. Now it's called Globally Hub or something like that. Yeah, and that is where I made good friends. So it was basically a CRM for migration agents.
mm,
It was built in Laravel PSP. It was my first time working in a team with other people. There were like 10 engineers, a lot of front end, back end engineers. Um, and then so I changed a few companies. One company after that, and that next company was an even bigger company called Lockpoint. They had like 100
oh,
engineers probably at that time. But it was a bit of a different setup. So, anyways, I gained some experience working in a really closely knitted group of people
yeah,
to working in a 100 people company, 100 engineer company, where there were like
that's a
probably like
big,
seven or eight teams. It was a big jump. It's
yeah.
also a really different engineering culture. Um,
I mean,
one,
was it
yeah,
difficult to adjust? Like, were you able to adjust quickly? How was like, obviously, when you're working with five people in the team, you could say like, okay, let's just turn off the servers and go for lunch, or let's lock down the office and go for lunch. It would be more like gang of friends trying to do something, right? When you're working with like five or six developers,
yeah,
and then jumping to corporate, kind of semi small startup which has like
yeah.
five or six teams, a lot of coordination. How did you manage to like switch a different persona, or like how, what did you do?
Yeah, I actually didn't think I did well. I think I
I like
sucked
the
pretty bad.
honesty. I like the honesty.
Yeah, yeah. I like it was a different environment, and I just had a hard time adjusting to it. Yeah, I didn't do it well. I think the time when I started to, it was actually not a cultural fit for me as well. That's also why I
Mm,
really suck. I think that's one of the reason when you are trying to join a company,
mm.
cultural fit. You not They are not just
Is it?
interviewing you, you
Yeah.
are also interviewing them. It's a choice for you to ask questions. When finding the right company, it makes a huge difference. That's like joining a company. Oh my god, I shouldn't say this out loud, but probably not the right thing for me.
Mm,
Just the way I
like,
was. Yeah.
it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like, as long don't like, these are things are personal, right? And these are opinions, and there's a saying, right? Opinions are like a forehead. Everybody has one.
Yeah, yeah. But I think like the then I moved to Australia.
Mm,
I joined the company called the Iconic. So that was pre-COVID, just before pre-COVID. And at that point, the Iconic had a great reputation for being a company with really good high engineering standards already at that time. So at that time, we were already doing like Kubernetes and microservices, using RabbitMQ for event-driven asynchronous communication. It was like really cool stuff
yeah,
back then. I think it was just a couple of years after Netflix was doing microservices or something. Anyway,
yeah.
microservices back then was a big deal, like really big deal. And then I joined Iconic. It was
Mm,
like a really cool engineering culture. Like either it was really different from my previous company.
mm,
It was a great cultural fit for me. Like I could actually, like, if for example there was like a if there was like an incident, maybe an like increase in error rate of a microservice from
mm.
totally different team, right? I could actually go there and I could actually send a PR. Like I didn't like that was something I still haven't found, like
Most of the companies.
in a lot of the companies, because like, oh, you have this team, they only do
Oh,
their
I
like.
see. I see. Like, so the
It was a
work is
very, yeah,
not tied to particular like team. It's more like, if you see a problem,
yeah,
if you can fix it, just do it.
yeah, exactly. You can just fix it. Yeah, like I don't know, like some maybe you need to scale up because the auto scaling didn't trigger up, right?
Yeah.
You just go there and increase in instance, like, like,
That so in currently the company I'm working, also we have something like similar philosophy, where like, we have philosophy like, you build it, you run it, and other teams help facilitate it. So like, software engineer are responsible for almost everything. Like, they are the one scaling the things, they are the one upgrading the things, that they are the one patching your services, they are the one deciding what infrastructure to put where. So generally, me as an asari, we kind work as a like shepherding, and like vesting, or like vetting things, so that we maintain the what kind of like reliability and security side of it. However, the sole owner for the team or project is the engineer or the team, which is, I find this culture to be more kind of like welcoming, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
nobody owns it, you don't have to get approval or something, it's just
yeah.
you do it.
Yeah, I agree. Like you don't have to like do approvals from, I don't know, your, I don't know, principal engineer, staff engineer.
Yeah.
Everything has to go through a fixed processes. You like this is something I saw on Twitter recently. Is like, you can have a good structure,
Hmm.
but does not mean you have like strict rules. You
Yeah.
have a good structure, that means like what you said, right? Who owns what and
Mm.
how do you contribute? There are guidelines around it,
Yeah.
and if you make mistakes, you just learn from it, right? You don't need like rules saying, hey, only this engineer can do this, only this engineer has production environment access,
There is a technical term for this, right? Red tapes or something, like corporate red tapes,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, corporate retros, yeah.
We don't like that. Having work in such companies is kind of like pain in the like,
Yeah,
right? And so
yeah, like I have to do something, I need approval from 10 different people, I can't even do it, like it's so frustrating to me, like.
true. It's true. So like on regard to that context, like you mentioned you worked in Nepal for like couple of companies and you like moved to Australia. You are already working in couple of companies. And fun fact, you are the, I think you are the only person whom I knew came to Australia by directly through work sponsorship. So that's an interesting thing, because all of my friends I've ever like met in Australia, they came to start, they came to Australia, they did their studies, then applied for a job and then got a job. So so like you were kind of like an inspiration for all the newcomers, that if you work well, if you know the stuff, you can actually directly land a job in Australia and move, or directly land abroad, like job abroad and move. You don't have to go through the like education shenanigans unless you actually want to study. If you
Yeah,
want to study, that's a different story.
yeah, yeah.
So like the question that I want to ask was like, so you worked in both of these worlds, right? You worked in culture where Nepalese culture, where we are like more laid back and a bit like different, like different than Australia. So how
Yeah.
did you find your like life as a software engineer in Australia and Nepal?
Oh, I think it's maybe the other way around. I thought the culture in Australia was way more laid back. Like it was more empowering to me. Like coming from, yeah, it was such a huge jump. Like I learned a lot. Like just working with people who are more talented, but at the same time like more humble. Like I think like my first job at the Iconic, I
Mhm.
think maybe I'm being too honest. Like I was a bit of an asshole at the start. Like like when writing
So
PR reviews.
you like, so
Yeah.
similar to Pokemon, right? Have you watched Pokemon? I don't know if you watched
A
it. Not not.
little bit, I don't
So
remember
like
watching.
Pokemon, Digimon, like these things
Uh,
evolve over time. Once you grow, like the level increases and they evolve. So
yeah,
you still had not evolved from that like into like empathetic engineer.
yeah, yeah. At that time, yeah, I was not. Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. Like, so I was like really harsh with people on feedback. Like, people would do something, and I would be like, "Hey, this is so maybe this is so bad. Like, why the hell did you do this? This is really bad performance. This is really not clean code. Why are you inheriting a class which is 500 lines? You know, like."
That's wrong. That's wrong.
like
Just to put it like just a note aside. That's wrong. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, exactly, yeah. um but then someone, a couple of people reached out to me, and I think one of the instances was like I was having a beer. It was like 10 p.m. Friday, hang out with my friends, like hang out with my colleagues, and
Mhm.
then they were like, God, Ujjwal, you're such a chick dick sometimes, and and then only I realized that, oh shit, I had
But
no
they
idea.
call
I
you
had no,
out. They call
yeah,
you out. Oh
yeah, I
damn.
had no idea. Like they were
And I
much
would
more
really
nicer.
love to have a friend who calls you out when you are being a
Yeah,
dick, rather
yeah,
than somebody who says like, "Oh, you're fine. It's okay.
yeah,
Nothing is wrong." Right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
be
Feedback.
having
Yeah, yeah,
honest friend is much better than like have one honest friend rather than like 15 fake ones.
yeah, yeah.
That would.
The thing is, like, you do need a mindset for it, though. It can be
Hmm,
incredibly like a humbling point for you. And how do you take those feedback, right? For
true.
me, I struggle with taking like constructive, like criticism type of
Criticism.
feedback. Even then, I struggle. Like even today, that I struggle. But I somehow I took it really positively, and it was like a almost like a game changing moment for me. So then I realized the importance of empathizing with people, right? So
Mhm.
people have their own, people might do something, like have their own perception of it. Like they might, I can't just be like, hey, this is a sit code, like they must have done something when doing it. They're competent
Yeah.
engineers, like
So like
senior engineers.
putting yourself in somebody
Yeah,
else's shoes, right? Like,
yeah,
mm, so like just to add, like I used to be in the mindset, similar mindset as well,
yeah,
and a kind of dick, I would say.
yeah,
But eventually, yeah, like you grow into this stuff, right? You didn't even realize you were somebody who can be empathetic. That's like initially the passion you have is the one that driving you, right? I'm
yeah,
passionate about coding and I want to make sure everything is up to this standard. But
yeah,
later you realize, once you go through the life and experience and everything, you realize, this is fine as long as your relationship with your colleague is good. This is
Yeah.
fine. Anything, whatever happens, we will go through it together.
Yeah,
And
exactly, exactly. It's all about doing meaningful work and together. Like you can't really get things done.
yeah.
Like one person, you can't do anything. Like literally nothing. Especially working in a team, you need like support from people. Even if you are like the mastermind, you
Hmm.
can't do it alone. Like you need
Oh
people on
yeah.
your team. You gotta make sure people understand the way you're thinking about solving problem, making sure they resonate with
Hmm.
why and what and how. It's so important.
Yeah.
Sometimes you actually get a lot of feedback even if you're a mastermind. You actually might other people might tell you perspectives that
Nowadays, like,
didn't notice it, you know.
yeah, nowadays company even they don't want, like, they don't have, they have strict policies of, like, I saw somewhere like no hiring intelligent jerks or genius jerks. So like
Yeah.
whatever, like, genius you are, if you are not capable of working in a team, or
Mhm.
as you said, empathizing, then doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
There's no point for you, like. So that's a good one. And like, what other experience did you feel like the difference between life as a software developer in Nepal and in Australia,
Yeah, I'm
apart from
realizing.
like culture of
Yeah.
improvising, and like, how was the tech, like, is it same, or was it,
Yeah.
you found Australia it to be a bit more modern? Obviously Australia, you have resource, like access to a lot of resource, which you don't have in Nepal.
Yeah.
But nowadays it's changing. Back then it didn't had, right? To spawn a server, you have to find some VPS provider and give them like few bit of money, and it was not as accessible and like reliable as AWS or any cloud provider that we have now.
Yeah. Yeah, there's probably a lot of different things, but it probably depends on the company that I worked in
Mm,
Nepal. So I wouldn't be able to like tell exactly
mm,
what were the difference. It's probably a lot of different things, and like I said, it has probably changed a lot.
mm,
I've heard from people I know working there, like the industry is quite different, especially the boom,
mm.
and now the recent downturn has had a huge impact. A lot of people have newer people have joined the industry like with everyone else in Nepal. There's a
Mm.
lot of like software companies. There's a lot of like agencies which do work for the companies outside.
Yeah, Nepal
Because
is also being a tech hub for outsourcing works. Almost
yeah,
all of my friends, they are working for some companies abroad. Like they are not working for like companies which is in Nepal, and also the company which are in Nepal, they are doing the job for companies outside Nepal. So kind of like it's evolving. Obviously, we are bringing in the revenue, but
yeah,
that's a different thing.
yeah,
Let's delve into like a little bit of professional experiences. Like I want to hear more of, like, you have been in the industry for more than 10 years, and like I want to know more about, like, you have worked with a company which builds a product, and you have worked with a company which provides a service like ship it,
yeah.
and you work with like I Kitty Pay right now. You had worked with Iconic. So what's the difference between working in a service based company and a product based? Like, what's the, not the actual difference, it's more like w- organizational workflow, or like general difference. So I couldn't put it in the right way.
So when you say service-based company, do you mean like the outsourcing agency sort of
No,
a
i
thing,
mean i
or?
mean like ship it, right? Ship it provides a service to customer like us,
Hmm.
whereas uh Kitty Pay is, it has its own product, Kitty Pay, which people use.
Yeah.
So kind of KTP is also a service based, maybe Iconic, where you sell stuff.
Ah, okay, okay.
Basically, like,
Ah, you mean like company where
where they sell
product?
sell
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
and company which provides a service.
Hmm. So you're talking about two different kind of companies. Like
Yeah,
I'm
two
just trying
different
to make
kinds.
sure.
Like
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
experience, and what's
Hmm.
the difference did you found?
Yeah. Okay. So just to reiterate, I understand correctly. Like one is a type of company where the product is not the main focal point, so it's the service. So maybe they are selling something else, and product is just like maybe they have some technological platform to
Yeah, yeah.
to to buy stops or integrate stuff, but like
Mhm.
their business is totally separate. Maybe selling a car or something. Like Tesla sell cars, but they have software
Tesla,
stack.
example,
Yeah.
example, Tesla, yes.
And then versus a
Shipping.
company which is primarily just like, yeah, just product. That's their main
Yeah,
thing, right?
example would be AWS, right?
Yeah. I guess
From your experience, what, like, over the time, did you found any difference, or was is it same? Uh,
this is a really good question. Yeah, like I like so I was like really fortunate. Like the iconic, like it was the engineering team at that time. At one point was like 100 people, and the whole company was like 1,000 people. Or so engineering was just like almost a small part of it, right? But it was a really fortunate, like it was a really good engineering culture in the way that pr- uh, like um like they treated engineering as like one of their core. Like they almost, it was almost like a, almost, I wouldn't say actually engineering first company. So because
mm,
engineering was not just used for buying, so for people to buy stuffs, it is
mm,
also used in say data, like to make decisions on like
mm,
what product to stock, right? So a new season is coming up, right? We need
mm,
people to stock, we need to buy stock, we need to buy people, buy products and have it in our warehouse ready to go, right? But you make those decisions from data. And who creates the platform for people to look at the data? It's the data engineering team, right? And also like all the software that is used in the warehouse. Even though it was like 1,000 people, it was very software driven, data driven.
mm,
Like there were a lot of integrations with like, I don't know, shipping providers, for example. Like it was all like software, but it wasn't like I guess it's a different than a lot of the traditional companies where
mm.
software is not really finely ingrained in a lot of teams. They
Decision
might
making
use,
process.
yeah, they might use like Excel sheets to make decisions, right?
I
They
see.
might not have like they might record things in Google Docs, but nowadays you can like, it's like a company which is more modern from a technological point of view understands the value of software, and they use software everywhere, and the
Mm,
softwares are usually integrated to each other
yeah.
in some capacity, right? You order something, you just know something is ordered, it's integrated to your financial accounting software. Accounting software is one.
Mm,
Like all of these are integrated, and then the thing is like who actually handles all these integrations? Your engineering team, or maybe an IT department, or something like that, right? So um, I think that's like makes a huge difference. um, like even a service based business
mm.
which has IT as like a focal point, and engineering becomes a focal point versus
I see.
companies. Yeah,
So you found to be like product-based companies are more product-based companies which are more like data-driven,
yeah.
succeeds more or like does better from your experience.
Probably, yeah. Like product based, yeah. Like they have to a degree. Like they need,
Yeah.
like it has to be very data driven. Like all the decisions that happen, like taking on a product feature and roadmap, right? Like
Mm,
every time someone comes to me and it's like, Ujjwal, I really need this bug to be fixed, even if it's a bug, right?
mm.
And I'm like, oh, we have 100 different things. Why do you think this bug needs to be fixed? What's the percentage of people that's affecting this bug? Maybe it's one of those people like me who can't actually submit a form.
Uh,
Maybe is doing a weird validation. Maybe someone is there actually frustrated. But I want to know the numbers behind it. There's 100 problems that need to be
I
solved. What?
see.
Yeah, you need to
So,
ask that question because a lot of everything is urgent. Like you, I'm not saying bad about product manager, but like
no,
sometimes
no.
it feels like everything is urgent and you have
I
to
mean,
like really, yeah, like because
like, so
yeah,
that's good skill to have, right? Like when you are talking on numbers and facts, there is no like no middle ground to have conflict on. It's no like it's not an emotional thing, right? It's not it's not a personal thing. It's just tell me the numbers, right? That's a good way to put it. So basically, like, iconic molded you into this data driven, fact
yeah,
driven
yeah,
person.
yeah. We used to do like experiments. Like it was all about like, okay, have a theory,
Mm.
but also have it on the back of your mind that it's probably not gonna work. A lot of the times it actually didn't work. So we had to be really experiment driven, right? So do something maybe a little bit, maybe not, like you have a feature and
Mm,
you are like really do it in an experimental way,
mm,
in a sort of way that if things don't work hard, you are like you clean it up, you go back and fix it, clean it up, or you make updates to fix it up, right? But if it works well, then
mm,
actually do it properly. Is in like you
mm.
actually now invest in scaling the feature.
I see.
Like I don't know, like you don't just go up and like create this infrastructure which is able to infinitely scale, and you don't even have a proven track record that feature works, like maybe just do the feature in a way that maybe 1,000 people can like
I
use it,
see.
right? Only release to the 1,000 users, take their
Mm,
feedback. If it works, maybe like do something manually scale, maybe even manually scale the software to, I don't know, 10,000 users, see their feedback, right? Now we're like, okay, we got feedback from people, it actually works. Maybe now let's do it properly. And a lot of the times what happens is like even the solutions that are not really well done
mm.
actually can end up scaling pretty well, like we,
Generally, yeah.
yeah,
If the like testing and code is written well, it doesn't
yeah,
require too much of things to scale it out, unless you go the like the higher margin where like 20 40 requests per second, like 100
yeah.
requests per second, right? That is where like you start getting a bit more load and see the latency.
Yeah, exactly. And if you have a company which actually does where engineering quality like has to be of a certain level, right? For example, when you're doing things, you make things stateless, right? That means you can actually scale your servers. You
Mm,
have servers to be scalable. If it's something that you do it usually, now
mm,
you can actually pretty easily scale up. Maybe it might be really in performance, in fixed performance
yeah,
later on, right? But at least you can scale it. It could work quite well
I
to a
see.
certain degree. um yeah, like this, like being this, yeah,
But
like that's
that's the
something.
benefit of working on a distributed system as well, right? Like when you have a distributed system or microservice, then it's easier to independently scale or deploy new features or services. That's like you already have worked, obviously you worked in Nepal and worked at the startup. I'm guessing you already have experience working with monoliths as well. So like what do you think, when should a company opt for microservice architecture, and
Yeah,
when it should like just stay with monolith and be
mm,
wait until, oh, we are getting popular, like we are getting a lot of traffic, and now we should start to break it down.
yeah.
So
That's a really good question. I think there's a really lot of different factors in it, right? I personally think that most of the time monolith will do just fine. The only, like, the thing, like one of the reason people, one of the misconception with microservices is like it helps with scaling problems, which is true to a degree, right?
yeah.
It does help with scaling, but it not in the way that I think most people think. Like you can scale monoliths as well, like
Mm,
the thing, like from a traffic level, like it can go like, I don't know, like hundreds of thousands of requests per second, it can do
mm,
just fine. I don't think it's a problem. The thing monoliths really help it, not with the traffic user scaling but more with an organizational scaling. If you have people, if you have like one or two product or something, and you have like 100 or plus engineering team, and there's like 10 product teams, and everyone working in different side of the product solving their own problem, really focused product teams.
mm,
And you don't want them to jump into each other toes. You
mm.
want them to be able to independently do the product features, experiment, like solve the problems on their side. Like really hyper focused product teams, right? Then it might make sense to do microservices
Mm.
for just for organizational scaling, I
Yeah,
think.
you hit the nail really hard. Like people have this myth that microservice is like would make their application go scalable, but microservice, like I've seen microservices done bad,
Yeah.
and it
Mm.
has brought down the entire infrastructure as like company,
Yeah.
it down the company as well. So
Yeah,
like
and it's a totally different like mindset. Like it's
yeah,
a totally different mindset of how you do things. You have to make it more like resilient. You can't just like call a function, now you might have to think
extra
about,
work,
yeah,
the extra work, a lot of extra work, which does like, so I like, so that's a clear thought process like the company have, like if I'm working building a startup and I have like 6 or 7 engineers, obviously, sorry, 6 or 7 people. Out of them, two or three would be an engineer. And going microservices from day one, would you recommend it,
No, no.
or would you like
Yeah.
not?
Yeah, no, but there is a caveat to it. Like
Yeah.
one of the problem, like I've seen problem is like with monolith. I so definitely way to be. If I were there, I would be like monolith, 100% way to go.
Mm,
But you have to have some level of modularity to it.
mm,
And the thing with modularity is like people think they are doing modular. They're not really doing modular a lot of the times. Like you can't just have an app and have different folders for modules. So you have a folder for product, maybe you have one for order, you have one for inventory, but they are like totally tightly coupled. Like
mm.
you are calling like from product, you're calling order
Yeah.
database,
Tight,
you're joining different tables.
tightly coupled.
Yeah, like they're like really tightly coupled. There's no like good contract between where the modules there. It's not
Mm,
really modal. That's where one of the problem happen is like I think that's where one of the problem with monolith comes from. Is like people it needs to be modular. I think from day
mm,
one it has to be modular, but
mm,
people it's a very different it's a very difficult skill, and it's something that isn't quite prevalent
mm.
from my experience, and that's where the problems happen. Over time it starts to become a giant spaghetti. You can't
Oh,
really unload it, you can't unpack it.
mm.
You change one thing, you break something totally different, and then
Also
um,
mentioned about unit testing, how hard it is to test things out, right? It
yeah.
becomes really hard.
Yeah. To testing, you can't test things. But yeah, so it's a monolith is definitely the way to go. But you need some. You need. I think
Mm,
it's good if you hire people who have good experience doing modular monoliths, and really be very very strict to it about it. Like one of the things that is
mm.
like you can't join tables from different modules,
Yeah.
and then like how the hell do you? I need to create a report. How the hell? So there are ways to solve it.
Mm,
The other thing is also like doing asynchronous um, communication between modules. So it
mm.
doesn't have you don't need to use microservices architecture to use RabbitMQ and Kafka, where you
Yeah.
have events, emitting events, and then the other modules are reacting to it. For example,
Mm,
this you have an order place event, right?
yeah.
Order is one of the easiest example, and then maybe there is some inventory module which
Mm,
needs to react the order place module, and maybe to reduce an inventory. This is actually a really simple example. There are a lot of complications doing it because now you need a transaction across different
yeah.
boundaries. But there are obviously there are challenges around doing it, but you need to start from the ground up. Modular, event based when you can, synchronous only if you have to. And also there are challenges with doing asynchronous event based communication between modules. Yeah. um, there are a lot of challenges in that, but if you do it from the ground one line,
Mm,
and if you have your engineers really understand the philosophy, then
yeah.
I think you can do modular monolith really well. But yeah, it's a difficult problem. You need to do it from ground up. You need to make sure people understand it. You need a good some level of good platform to it. So you need few people really invested in
Mm,
creating a platform where you can like do so that it's sort of easier to really do things. So imagine I'm kind of creating a feature,
mm,
I'm doing something in a module, right? And there is another module where I need to react to it and I need to solve a problem, do something, right? But I don't know, what if you dispatch the module and then dispatch the event and the handler fails? Now you
mm,
need some level of retry to it, right?
yeah. Yeah. So,
And now,
yeah, circuit breaking, and like
yeah,
at least have some way to kind of like failure modes. Yeah, failure modes. Like
yeah,
you need to make sure like the
yeah,
application
yeah,
has
failure.
that in place. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Regardless of whether you do a monolith or
Mm,
microservices or even modular monolith, you need like failures. Thinking about failures would be
yeah.
one of the most important things. Like
That is the key thing that I mentioned to, like, when I'm talking with other friends as well. So like when you handle error, handle in such a way that it doesn't bring down the whole application itself, right?
yeah,
Maybe that part of application, or run it in a degraded state with that feature not working. Whether it be microservice or monolith, it doesn't matter on the architecture. It's more like your app's ability to be resilient to any kind of failure.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Interesting, but like it depends as well, right? Like as a startup, maybe I would be more concerned about, I'll just push it, right? I'll push it and see how people would react, and then maybe scale it. So it depends on the thought process of the team. However, like a company with like 20 100 engineers maybe could think it in a different way. And then
Yeah.
as you mentioned, it comes with a lot of different factors as well. Would be like competency of among the team, like how confident your team member are on like migrating. So on that process, like, see, as we mentioned, like when a startup, when you first need to build an app, you go with monolith, don't think about microservice at all. So imagine I built a company, I built it in monolith, and then my company is doing well, like it's getting, like I'm getting that
Yeah.
100 customers every day. Now you have like, so the reason I'm asking is you have this experience of working with like smaller, small, big, largest company to a multi-million-dollar company in like
I
different
think
parts.
you're overselling me, but
I've
thank
seen,
you.
so just for everybody is listening, you usual is downplaying his competency, is really competent guy, really competent guy. If you have any question on software engineering, he's your guy. So my question here is like, how does a company plan their migration from, like, how should a company plan their migration from monolith to microservices?
Yeah. Yeah. So at this point, I'm assuming all the due diligence is done. You really think the monolith
Yeah.
doesn't check out
Yeah,
for whatever organizational scaling problems you're dealing with,
true.
right? And now you really need microservices as a way to like sort of make
Divide
sure.
the
Yeah.
separation, or do divide the domain between different teams. Like
Yeah.
we found out microservice is the solution
Yeah.
after everything, and then like how should our team plan for it? Because obviously we don't want to rewrite entire application from scratch.
Yeah.
It would take forever.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different things that needs to be done, right? So one of the things is like you got to make sure your team understands why you're doing it, and obviously the complications of monolith and complications of microservices. You just don't go to microservices. It's almost like you go to microservices to solve problems. Now you actually a lot of the times you find yourself dealing with totally different problems, and now you can have it monolith. And a lot of the times that's why it's not worth it. But if it's like if that is worth it,
Mhm.
then your team needs to understand it, right? That's
Mhm.
one of the things. Like getting a team on board
Mhm.
about any sort of any change in your technical culture. I think it's important. Like, and monolithic microservices is
Mhm.
probably one of the biggest jumps you can make, right? That's probably one of the biggest thing. The other thing is also about like creating these services boundaries. You need to really think about the boundary, um, like where do you draw the boundary, and it's something that you may or may not get it right.
Mhm.
And it's really, there are a lot of things that you can actually do. Something I've recently learned, not recently, haven't practiced that much, but event storing. So it's a way, event storing is basically an exercise where you put things on a on a sticker in a board. You get people to write like sentences in stickers of how the product works. Maybe an order is placed, something goes into the inventory, you send an email, maybe on maybe you start to sip it, like like you have all of these processes laid out. You can actually use that exercises, like go look it up, event storming. Use that exercises to like create boundaries um, of your microservice. It's a really good way to do it. I think that's how they recommend. It's a bit hard, but yeah. Anyway, there are probably a lot of other ways to do it as well. But getting your boundaries right is one of the most important thing, because if you don't get your boundaries right, then it
Mhm.
could actually be more secure. Could actually be worse. Like yeah, like you have now you have this microservices where boundaries are really not done. So
Fine.
something that should have been one microservice is now two microservices, three microservices.
Yeah.
Something that could have been two microservices is now five microservices, because now you have these two microservices constantly talking to each
Mhm.
other, and you're like, why the hell are this? Why should this be one, right? So
Yeah.
one of the thing that used to happen, I think Netflix, and that probably made sense at that scale, is that creating like microservice for every little small thing.
Mm-hmm.
um, and then I think now they have backed up. Now I think now they're talking about macro services more. But I
Yeah.
think it's important to understand like the boundaries and how do you create those boundaries, and whether it should just be like smaller
Mm.
um, macro
Kind of like
services, the microservices. Yeah,
kind of like domain driven approach. Like you build a
yeah,
domain and then break it down into like different
yeah,
boundaries, and then so that way you have a way to visualize how often the service need to communicate with each other, while also maintaining like strict boundaries.
yeah.
The
Domain driven design. It's
yeah,
definitely the way to go. It's a really hard skill, domain driven design.
yeah,
And like you can use domain driven design to create those boundaries. I think they're called bounded context.
bounded context. Yeah.
Yeah, bounded context. It depends on what happens in your domain, all the events that happen in your domain, and how it communicates to other domain, and where a life cycle of something
Mm.
finishes. For example, I'm like really simplifying the problem, right? For example, inventory could be its own bounded context, because inventory has to deal with um, maybe has to deal with shipping to a degree, but shipping could be a totally different thing, or maybe it could be the same, right? Shipping has inventory has to deal with ordering, but
Mm.
ordering might be a different thing, right?
Mm.
It might the inventory might deal with, so if it's shipping is a part of it, then it could be picking and packing. So you have
Yeah.
an order coming into a system, you pick it, pack it, you ship it. Um, like you also how the items come,
Mm.
how people actually order things for inventory for the next season coming up. But if you are saying the clothing retail industry, right? So it's like inventory has its own complications, and it will definitely interact with other boundaries, right? Product
Yeah.
boundary. But then you like sometimes you'll see, okay, this makes sense. It has its own problem, and maybe a team can work on it itself, or maybe a couple of teams can work on it. So you can use domain-driven design bonded to create this bonded context, and I think event storming actually that actually is supposed to help with. Um, yeah, creating those bounded contexts, figuring out those bounded. And the other thing is like you have to be sort of flexible over time. You need this experimental mindset. It actually doesn't matter whatever you're doing, whether it's this product or something like that, you will probably get interfaces wrong,
Yeah.
and you need to be able to like come back if you can.
Mm.
And it depends, right? If you got it wrong and then still works, you don't really have to change it that much. There's not much changing requirements, fine, right? But now you're finding, oh, you actually have to add a lot of features to it, and the interface, you see the problem with interface, right? You have to
Yeah.
go and back and fix it. And sometimes that's a lot of cost. Sometimes the business isn't really interested in paying it, and that's where you need
Like
to be able to like sell to the business why that tech debt needs solving. If you do it in a better way, maybe you could
mm.
make the productivity better, maybe the organizational long-term goals might be met better. It's harder to quantify.
Yeah.
But yeah, you need to go back and fix it if you can.
Yeah. So like that's the you brought up really good thing about like, so how do you define the like, obviously you have led multiple teams from small to large. So as a leader, or as a like team lead, or like a actual like technical lead, how do you define a balance between like, as you mentioned, trying to make it good, or like good enough or perfect, uh and how like how do you decide whether it is pragmatic or not? So how do you define the balance, like as a from a leadership perspective? Because as a lead, you are the one in charge of calling the shots or deciding. Obviously team decision comes into play, but or like at the end of the day, you would like, how do you kind of find a balance between being pragmatic and being perfect? Because you don't want to be like, if you are trying to over perfect or make that service too much perfect, it will take forever.
Yeah,
So when do you
yeah.
decide to ship it and be pragmatic about it? So how do you find the balance?
that,
That was what I wanted to
that
ask.
that's a really good question. So obviously, one of the thing is like if you have some like mindset of quality and good engineering practices, it's heaps of different things, or heaps of different like technologies, like whether it like there is like good practices on how you can create APIs, good practice
Mm.
how you can, I don't know, integrate to databases, good practices on how you do error handling, like there's so many different things, right? But if you have a team which is really quality focused, they will want to create quality from the ground up.
Mm.
And that really helps. That actually helps with evolving, right? For example, if you invest in like static type programming language, or
Yeah.
static typing like programming language, like say
Mm.
TypeScript, Java, if you're using any sort of something like that, then you might be able to evolve things quite easily.
Mm.
Like I don't know, if you got the interfaces wrong, right? You can use ID features. If it's monolithic, it obviously
Yeah.
becomes harder in microservices. If it's a monolith, you have a module monolith. Okay, maybe you got the interface between module wrong, right? You should create a separate interface, maybe, or maybe
Mm.
create different module methods. You want to deprecate the methods, you can just like quite easily do that if you have like a good platform for doing that, and a mindset
Mm.
where people aren't actually afraid of changing things, because you
Mm.
have good tooling, and your engineering culture supports it. You have good tooling,
Yeah.
then actually becomes quite easy. But yeah, there will be times, I think maybe I'm diverting from the question, but there will be times where it becomes difficult, and you need to really, um, you can't just do it in a day or something. Now you
Mm.
need, say, a quarter to fix it, right?
Mm.
Now, like, you can't just do it yourself. Now you need to make sure that the whole product team, it actually needs to be something that's worth solving, right? You
Mm.
might have a backlog of different things, right? Always one of the things, like, always good, every time a problem comes, you go to the look at the backlog.
Yeah.
Hopefully you have a backlog, or some sort of decent amount of backlog, and you can go there and you can do 100 different things. Now, like, okay, where does it belong in the backlog? Because the thing is, like, you only have fixed resources, right?
Mm.
The thing that you can take next sprint is what is the highest priority. That's the only thing you can take. You can only probably do one or two things at a time, right?
Mm.
And whether to solve it or not, I think it
Mm.
ultimately come back to, is this a priority enough? And that's when, how do we make sure that, okay, how is it a higher priority than some product feature? How
Yeah.
is it a higher product priority than other tech develop? It has to, you need to be able to quantify the impact as much you can. Sometimes the impact is not quantifiable, right?
Mm.
But if it's a problem that's actually really slowing down your team,
Mm.
creating problems, and then you go and talk to people, and everyone aligns that, okay, you need to solve this, you're like really slow, and then if it's more important than other problems, then I think it's what's on. I think that's all it matters. Like you will create
So
tech debt, right? It's
yeah.
just how big of a tech debt it is compared to other tech debt, whether it's worth solving versus going on product and doing a new feature. What's the long term impact of it? I think, like, it has to be very, like, fact driven as much as you can.
I see.
Um, if it's a small couple of hours thing, maybe, like, the way I function is like, oh, something couple of hours, I don't even tell people sometimes. Just like create a PR for it. Obviously
Yeah.
it depends on the engineering culture. Sometimes you need tickets and things like that. um like,
Oh.
sometimes you need one level of pragmatism to a degree. You can't just, like, like, stick to these rules. Sometimes fine, but if it's something that will probably take a lot of effort, then you can't just probably do things on your own.
Mm.
You need to make sure that product and engineering who own the backlog, like, have
Mm.
to buy into it. Otherwise, yeah.
And also, like, as you mentioned about culture, right? Culture plays a major role on deciding these things. Example, like somebody created a PR, now you are not happy with it. That is where also where you need to figure out whether this is good enough to go,
Mm,
and we will fix it later.
yeah,
Like, as a lead,
yeah, yeah.
you would be obviously saying, okay, I'm happy with this, let's push it, or no, this should, like, at least
Mm.
we need to fix this, right? So
Yeah, there's a couple of different things I'll say on that. Right? So when someone has a PR and then something's totally wrong about it, right?
yeah.
There's actually a lot of problems. One, like, a bigger problem is on fixing it. Bigger problem is why the problem was there in the first place, and usually, yeah, and
True,
why
that.
the problem is there in the first place is because maybe the collaboration wasn't there in the first place. Maybe there
Mm.
need to be collaboration way before a PR is created, way
Yeah.
before even maybe sometimes the task is picked up, right? To make sure that the person who is creating the ticket and the rest of the team, maybe not the whole team, but is aligned on how to solve that problem.
It's true.
then like, because otherwise it like it
So
the other process is not scalable. You have people spending
yeah,
2 weeks, they come up with a PR and you don't like it, you want them to redo the whole thing again, that takes another 2 weeks, right?
yeah.
Which could have been solved by just talking in the first place. That's one problem, right?
So
Yeah.
basically, trying to identify what's like if it's happening again and again, more
Yeah.
frequent, then taking a step back and assessing whether why is it happening in the first place is the key to find the balance.
Yeah, but the thing is like yeah, this is the feedback, but the thing is like sometimes still happens sometimes.
It happens. It's
But
like
yeah,
it
like
often,
sometimes,
often more often than we imagine, right?
yeah, sometimes you really think about it, you decide on it, you work on it, and then maybe it wasn't about what someone did, maybe it was more about like you discovered more problems with the approach, right? You start to write unit test, or maybe you start to actually put it in production, because I think it's only usually done after you test in production.
Mm,
But that's a totally different thing, topic. But like you do it and then you realize, oh, it's a problem, right? Now you're like,
mm,
okay, it works to a degree, but maybe it doesn't work to a degree, or maybe you're unhappy about how it scales, right? Now, now I think what happens is like the thing that needs to be done to fix it.
mm,
That's a separate ticket on its own,
mm,
and that needs to be prioritized. Because what happens is like if you do that ticket, maybe it's an optional thing, maybe it's a non-optional thing. Maybe if it's a non-optional thing, it becomes easy, right?
mm,
Whatever thing that you are working on, maybe it's an epic, right? The timeline might get pushed slightly.
mm,
You need to go and tell to it product manager, it's okay. Okay, I think there's we have an issue, the timeline match. If it's an optional thing,
mm.
now you go back to the same backlog prioritization process, where you go back to the backlog. It's like how important this is compared to the rest of the features. If it is important, it's worth doing. If it's not important, it won't do that. I think that really solves most of the problems of
And
prioritization.
also it's also finding trying to find a balance between like short term and long term goals as well, right?
Yeah,
What is important right now, or like what does the team thinks it's important right now, and what should we do like to resolve it.
yeah,
So like trying to find a good balance, right?
yeah. Yeah, I haven't touched anything on short term. I think as much as you can, you need to be long term as much as you can, like as much as you can,
So
unless
your
if
question
it's
is
really
play long
expensive.
term game.
Yeah, unless it's really expensive to do it, right?
Okay.
Like you said, if you spend, I don't know, if you have to spend a couple of more hours and have to actually come up with a good long term solution, it's a no brainer. Just do it. If you
Yeah.
need to spend a month extra to do it, which could have taken, I don't know, a couple of days or a
Mm,
week, then now you go back to the same thing, right? So you have a short-term solution, long-term solution. You need to be able to quantify the impact of the short-term solution, long-term. Go back to the product and ask them question. Okay, if you do the short-term solution, this is what happens.
I see.
We incur this amount of technical debt. We do this long-term solution, we have less technical debt, actually helps us long term to do all these
Mm.
features. You go to the product and ask them questions, and then they become the one making the decision. Obviously, you can influence to a degree, because you're the one who is doing engineering, but yeah, like that really helps. Again, going back to the backlog and like, okay, this is the impact of it. You know?
That's true. That's true. Like finding a good balance. Like as a leader, you need to like. I think that's obviously it's as an engineer, it's a essential skill to have to like to be able to figure out what is important right now. But for a leader or somebody who is leading the team, I think that is much more important. Like very much essential when you go like later stages in your career, right?
Yeah,
uh, because people are looking up to you to like give direction or like at least let them know where we should be heading towards.
yeah.
So we will talk more about technical things. Let's talk more about like soft skill. I saw in your LinkedIn like you mentioned you are like the quote unquote empath. I cannot pronounce it.
Yeah. After being an
Empathic.
asshole, I learned it the hard way.
Yeah, empathic software engineer. So I wanted to know more about it.
Yeah,
It's almost 1 hour, but yeah, who cares?
yeah,
We are having good conversation. So what do you think about soft skills? Like, do you think what like so previously my perception was skills was my highest priority when I started the career. Like that is something I need to get. And soft skill, I didn't care much about it. Like I was like, not important. Now over the time, I've realized soft skill is here, technical skill is here. and you could grow it. It changes, but
Yeah.
this is where it, like, soft skill is very important. So what's your take on the importance of soft skill in workplace?
It's very difficult. And I mean, you could say to be like you could tell people, oh, just be a nice guy, and it's not that easy. It's not just being easy to be a nice guy and just be empathetic, because
It
we're
requires
all,
attitude shift. It requires complete attitude shift. You need to,
yeah,
like, embrace it, like, not
yeah.
just say, from tomorrow I'll wake up tomorrow and be a nice guy. You can't do this, right? It
Yeah,
just
yeah,
needs, right?
yeah, exactly. If you even if you are fully 100% convinced, oh, maybe I'm not doing some things right, maybe I'm being a dick to people, and then you totally acknowledge that, but it's still going to be hard for people to just like have that switch.
Yeah.
It's because our brain are wired by how we grow up
Mm,
and the experience that we have had. Now, every time someone comes up and says something,
mm,
whether you say, "Oh, that's really bad," or like, "Oh, it's not so good. Why did you do that?" But says, "Oh, like you appreciate what they have done.
mm,
You appreciate their effort, their perception, maybe their problem seen, whatever, and then you give them some constructive feedback in a way that um, the other person actually feels like you're actually being respected. I actually don't think there's any other way that like, I think human being are wired in a way that if I do something and you just come into my face and be like, oh, this is shit, you should
mm,
have done this way, I'm probably not going to hear the rest of your thing. Might
mm.
hear it, but I didn't might not really. I think I read a little bit of one of the book, how to make friends with people. It's like this really old book, but
How to
anyway.
influence people and make friends,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the one of the first chapter was like the human being, you have to like must um acknowledge, have to have this listening mindset, right? So you
Yeah.
need to listen to people, acknowledge, you try to empathize as much as you can,
True.
and then give them in a feedback. Then only they might
Yeah.
potentially take a feedback. Other, if you're not doing that, it's useless. It's absolutely pointless.
And
There's no other way of. So you need to have some level of empathy to work with people, so that you do good things, into to deliver good things, and to make sure that you guys are working well. You need to provide feedback and make sure people provide feedback. You need empathy, and it's a very hard thing. Like
and also, often what I found was, like, sometimes people don't even want the opinion. They just, like, so it has happened to me, and it happens in my home a lot. My wife complains about it. I don't, but over time, she has convinced me that sometimes people just want you to listen, and they don't want to hear your opinion. They don't want to hear your view, anything. They just want you to say yes,
Yeah,
and say, oh, that's, is that it? I just listen to them.
yeah,
um and what happened was, what happens is, like, when doing that, I found it builds the rapport more, rather than you directly giving them somebody's opinion in the first place. So,
yeah,
like, maybe, like, there's a saying, right? Listen to understand, not to respond.
yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Like if you come across with someone who might seem like I think like one of the first thing is not to think of them as bad people again, and probably think of it in a way that they're probably just like that, and maybe the way they grew up or their influences their friends had on them, or maybe they're like, I don't know, their the how they grew up has probably led them to the way. I personally like have my own personal problems as well, and I'm constantly working on it. Maybe they are constantly working on it as well. Maybe this is don't know, right? I think one of the first thing, if you come across to someone who are difficult people, it's important to. It can be hard, but you need to empathize with them as well.
mm,
That's one of the first thing. Then only you probably can like actually listen to them, right? And
understand.
if they are not totally receptive of it,
Mm,
I think it's important that then you have to like give up this thing that you're gonna tell something and they're gonna be like, oh, my life just changed because of the opinion. It's probably not gonna happen, right? You need to, if they want you to listen, you probably just need to listen, right?
yeah.
And over time, they might potentially.
He
So the
listen.
way to, they might potentially change. They might potentially start listening to
Mm,
you a little bit as well. It's a hard game. It's
mm,
a really long game, but that's the only way I think personally can be done. You need to empathize with them as well.
It
And then
also
over.
boils down to how is the rapport between two individuals
Yeah,
as well, right?
yeah,
So
over. Yeah,
if
yeah,
we have respect with each other, uh like if you respect me, I respect you, then each
yeah,
other's opinion we would listen it and try to like ponder on it after the conversation, even after the conversation has finished. And that is the like that is the I think that is the soul of collaborative environment. When you're working in a team, you need to have that rapport between each other. Like obviously there you need a team collaboration spirit, but you need to have respect, mutual respect between each other, like and like have each other's back, right?
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you need definitely to build rapport, and I think it takes a lot of time. Like I think it's
it takes
just
time,
quite
yeah,
quite
true.
human. So it's a very tricky thing. Like soft skills are very tricky. But I think one of the important things is like to be able to willing to learn, and you probably make a lot of mistakes along the way.
Yeah.
Probably not. There might be people who might not like your style, just not fit along with you, you know. And I think it's okay. Like even if people don't like you, or even if you don't like people, as long as we empathize with each other,
Mm,
and the way we think, we talk the way we talk, it's probably nothing personal most of the time.
mm.
It's just, I think nothing is ever really personal. Even if someone comes to your face and call you a bad guy, i I mean, I'm probably going to be upset for a while. But if I think about it, probably not going to be upset because they
I
probably
mean,
had maybe had a bad day, you know, or
I,
maybe they had a bad time with the family, or maybe they're going through something, or maybe just they grow up, you know. If you can empathize with it, you're probably going to be a much happier person.
that's
And yeah,
true. Like, and this is what like I find different between like somebody who is mature and immature. Like when somebody criticizes you, or immature person or somebody who is not good, like hasn't understood, would immediately either come up with a counter argument or get offended or gets angry.
yeah,
Whereas somebody who is mature would either think, oh, maybe the person had a bad day or something, or that person would ponder it back saying, oh, am I like that or not?
yeah,
Should I like do a reflection?
yeah,
So that's the key difference between somebody who is mature and immature. And some one of the good, like as you mentioned, you were some nerd joke before, but you learn these things, right? You learn these things in the workplace,
yeah,
you went through experience. So one key thing to note is these skills can be learned. Like it's not
yeah,
something like you are born with it, and it's not like something you just attain with like some
yeah, yeah,
meditation or something. It
yeah,
requires
yeah.
practice.
Yeah, so depending on how you grow up and how what your character is like, and I don't know, like some people might have a harder time, but I think
Yeah.
this is learnable. Like it's just take time.
Yes, true, true.
Can go like really long way. And the thing is like the thing with this, like you probably still make some bad decisions,
Hmm.
because our brains are really like it's almost like a wired thing. Like brains are wired in a way, and you have to sort of rewire parts of your brain, and it takes a
Hmm.
long time and might not be able to fully do it just the
I
way you
mean,
approach
if
people.
you are doing same thing for 30 years, if you're doing same thing for 30 years, it's hard, right? That now it has become a habit. So like completely rewiring, as you said, it takes time. It will take like it
Yeah,
will take like rough a lot of hard work, and it will take, maybe it will not go like completely resolved, or
yeah,
it will like you will not be get over like able to get over that attitude, but trying to at least empathize and reflect on those would help you in the long term, right?
yeah.
That's a good thing. And so talking about empathy, like you have led a lot of different teams throughout your life, and how does empathy and collaboration helps in software engineering? Like what's your take on that?
So lead, like how empathy as a leader helps you
Yeah,
to
as
lead.
a leader, like so you have worked in companies where like different culture, you have worked in company where empathy and culture or collaboration is preferred over everything, and
Yeah.
company where like hard strict technical things are preferred over everything. So what difference did you find where when you prioritize empathy over everything in software engineering? Like what is the benefit or outcomes of that?
Yeah, so I think like some of the like red flags of a bad not a let's say like some of the red flags of cultural wise from a software team
Mm,
versus like a team that's much more better. I
mm,
guess a lot of the times it's very easy
mm,
to draw a line, and I think the drawing line usually is the culture, especially
mm,
from how you treat people, how you empathize with people, and how you have this culture of empathy and good collaboration. I think that's like usually the defining thing. Like on other side of it, it's probably
mm,
gonna have higher output,
mm,
a higher output versus the other side, like the one with higher empathy.
mm,
Because the thing is, like they know we won't just empathize with the team and create a better product. Like create a better technical product. They'll probably actually create a better product for the user as well because they have greater empathy towards user. So
mm.
the thing with empathy is it's almost contagious. I've seen like
That's true.
yeah, you can so a lot of the times you have a team with like really good collaborative empathy. That you bring someone who's maybe not that from culture but are willing to learn. Obviously, you need that, but they're not quite new to the culture. Right? They can go in there and they can probably fit in as long as they're like willing to learn. So like you don't need like if you're hiring people, you don't need someone who's like already from that empathetic culture. You can probably like you just need someone to be willing to learn. That's the most important thing. As long as they're willing to learn and challenge, they're probably gonna fit in quite well over time. And the thing with this is like I said, higher quality flow. I think ultimately that's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to
Mm.
create value to the user. It's not about the technologies that you use, the cool technology that you use. I don't know, cool way that you scaled up your microservices.
For
It's
user,
all
it
about
doesn't matter, right? As long as they are able to like click that
yeah,
checkout button and buy stuff, they don't
yeah,
care where it is running, how is it
yeah.
running, right?
Exactly. Yeah, like it does. Like it matters only when it affects the team.
Mm,
Because sometimes what happens is like if you have this tech debt that really affect the morale of the team and the
mm.
developer experience. And when that happens, what ends up happening is now that becomes contagious, and now the team will end up building lower quality product
Yeah.
because what would I think what will happen over time is like they see that the management or the leadership team does not really empathize with the engineering team
Mm.
that much, and they are like, oh, I don't give a shit, I'll just do my job, like I'm just here doing my job. They probably want to create high quality products. So ultimately, like if you really even don't believe in empathy, you're building an engineering team, and you're not like that. Like I mean, like you're not really that convinced of it. I
Mm.
think the thing that will probably convince you is like if you have a good highly productive team where
Mm.
empathy is like at the heart of it, they will create a better product over time. You will see that in the user experiences. You will see that in the way they solve the problem over
Because
time.
they,
Yeah,
because they value, right? They care about it. They care about the team. They care about the code. They care about the product. And think that boils down to how empathetic your team is.
yeah. You're
A
gonna
lot of
create.
time what
Yeah,
I've noticed was like people don't speak about these things. Like obviously we are mature people and we infer it, right? And what I've heard most of the time is it's it's kind of like we just know, right? We don't need to talk about it. But I don't think that should be the like concept, or that should be that something like that should not be motivated. It's more like it should be you should talk more about this, because reinforced learning is also a thing, right? You need to people often you are invested in solving a problem too much that you don't think about being like that part of being empathic just skips your brain. It's like because you were so invested in solving this problem and you're that's annoyed by it, and then the wrong side of you just jumps out. So having a reinforced like scenario where your team is aware that our team values empathy and soft skill and culture, collaborative culture over everything, it needs to be like talked about. Company don't do it often. Like I
Yeah.
found.
Yeah, it's a, and again, it's the same cultural thing. Like if you have a, again, if you have a culture where you can freely speak out
Mm.
about some of these things, and it only happens when the company is open to feedback. Um, like they have to be like a lot of the companies, they claim to be open to feedback. They aren't like truly open to feedback. The only way
JD,
to like really distinguish
JD is
it,
that bullshit, right?
yeah, the only way to like really decide that they're actually really open to feedback is like they wouldn't take feedback personally, you know. They have to be like, okay, thank you for the feedback. They are actually like really genuinely thank for the feedback, and
Mm.
no, someone isn't in trouble for just for like speaking out loud, even
True.
if it's
That's
like
true.
really ugly truth. You're talking like something really ugly, nasty, but it's actually could be true to a degree, right?
Mm.
And if you empathize with why people think a certain way, then what happens is like you actually go and talk to them, find out why they are thinking a certain way. Maybe it's a totally different problem. Maybe it is actually a problem, you know. But there is some problem why someone's thinking like that. You actually need to
Yeah.
find out why it need to
No,
happen. So culture of feedback and being accepted to feedback, it's so important. It's like probably one of the most foundational parts
yeah.
of an
And
empathetic.
as a good leader, you should also like know where the frustration is coming from, right? If somebody in your team gave really negative feedback, it is the outcome of frustration that was building up inside him. And a good leader tries to see, rather than seeing the angry or frustrated part of him, tries to understand why the person is being frustrated. Is there anything in the team that's happening which is causing this frustration? Because it will bleed out, like as you said, empathy is contagious, but frustration is also contagious as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
exactly,
when
yeah.
somebody gets angry, then it spoils out the whole team morale and the setting as well, right? Team setting.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I think one of the things that really helps with this is like retro, and
Retro.
not doing retro just for the sake of doing retro, and you're an agile scrum team actually doing retro because people actually have a voice to actually say things out loud, and there are people who are actually there to listen and actually act upon it. A lot of the
Mm.
times, what happens is like, oh, you just talk about shit, and then nothing actually really ends up happening. You know, you just
True.
create this. Oh, really? You have a good retro ball, really cool vibe, but then nothing is really action. So, like the thing is, like at the end of the retro, what like once you've discussed it, you understand everyone's opinion. You have someone accountable for it.
Mm.
Um, and you come back next retro and be like, okay, did we action this? And it does not mean you solve the whole problem. Maybe you just initiate the conversation. Maybe it just be a ticket in the backlog to spike about the technical depth that you're having.
Yeah.
Maybe just starting a conversations about some other wider problems that the team is facing. So
How do
uh,
you do a retro, like in basically, I'm not sure if it's like confidential or not, like, but generally how you as a like team lead like to perform retro, like is is retro anonymous in your team? Like, do you like to do it anonymously, or do you like to put a
mm,
name to the feedback?
yeah,
So like, what's your preference on running a good
yeah.
retro? Or for you, what's a good retro looks like? How what does a good retro look like?
Before I say, before I jump onto that, can I
Yeah,
just say that the all of these things actually apply to everything. You don't have to be a team lead, and I'm
yeah.
I'm not even a team lead at my company. Like
I mean,
anyone
you have
can be a
like
like
somebody.
any yeah, anyone can be a team lead in some capacity. Sorry, a leader in some capacity, so they can host the retro in this case, right? So everyone should be able to host the retro. It's pretty easy. It's very easy like as long as you have a company which actually values feedback. They actually don't take things personally. Everyone can do to host the retro and do a lot of these things themselves, right? And I think that the coming back to your question, one of the um,
Effective retro.
key to doing effective retros, I think anonymity. I personally don't think it's necessary. I know a lot of the times. I think if someone has to be anonymous, I think it should be an option.
Yeah.
Like it should be an option if for people who are not totally comfortable.
Mm.
So but I don't think it has to be necessary to that everything has to be anonymous. I think if everything has to be anonymous, it might mean that people are not comfortable speaking out loud
True.
because they might feel judged, or there might be repercussions because they said
Yeah,
something out
the
loud.
fear of being stoned, right? Like if you say something bad which you felt, but
Yeah,
it might be true, might not be true, but if you have a name to that, and maybe the person might feel stoned, like they might be stoned, oh, this person, like
um,
shame, like wall of shame, right? Game of Thrones thing. So so
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, as you brought good, like I think you brought a good topic, like saying, if somebody is kind of afraid to or afraid to speak up, then there is something else, like there is another whole set of problems
yeah.
that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, true, exactly. Yeah, so you can start with having anonymous tickets, but
Mhm.
then when you're discussing it, you could give people an option to like
Speak
open
up.
up. Yeah, speak up. Hey, if you created this ticket, or if you didn't create it, because like whatever you have to say, speak up. So I think most of the time, like if you have a good cause, people are just gonna be like, "Oh, I created this ticket," I mean, it's anonymously created. um, and then it's like, but I think it's still probably important because they're not everyone's going to be totally comfortable about it. So it's also
True.
um, like it's also important to recognize people coming from like different social communication background.
Hmm.
um, yeah, like not everyone's introverted extroverted. People
Yeah.
have different abilities to be able to recognize that, and still be because that's one of the thing, like introverted extroverted, that's a whole different game. A lot of the times extroverted people are more get better opportunities
Mm.
because they're just like more widely spoken, but a lot of the times introverted people can actually be equally talented. And
Mm.
you need like if you have a good empathetic culture where you
Mm.
value people from all um, like nature, like I don't know, race, different, I don't know,
Yeah.
troubled past or whatever. Like you empathize with everyone. That means you're giving an opportunity to everyone
Mm.
to do well, and that actually ends up creating higher output
And
because
also,
you
like,
get
there could be different tracks as well, right? Somebody who is like well spoken, completely extrovert, maybe move toward like more roles which requires more communication, whereas somebody who is introvert but does the well job well, is empathic to the team, could more to a technical leadership role. So there could be different track for everybody. Like, it doesn't mean that the person who is introvert is not successful. It's more like they don't want to talk. It's their choice, right? Like, it's
mm,
not, in order to be successful you don't have to speak a lot, you don't need to be chatty, right? You
yeah,
just need to do your job well and be a team player. That's it.
yeah, yeah. You don't have to be charming at all. Like we're just
Yes.
like yeah.
I mean, I
um,
used to have really hard time. I still have hard time doing the small talks. I can't do it. Like, if it's technical, I can talk about it for hours. But
yeah,
my small talk in person is limited to, like, so like I have a bag of things that I ask and say, and then after that's over, I'm like, we both look at the each other, and like you could hear the cricket crick, 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 like doing in the background with the awkward silence. But I'm
yeah,
still working on it. I'm working on it, trying to improve my like, what do you call,
yeah,
soft talk, like
yeah,
like kind of water cooler talk.
like yeah,
Anyway,
look, if it helps, it helps to a degree, right? Like we
yeah.
can all like try to say it doesn't matter, but it actually helps, like those water cooler conversations, those small talks. I know a lot of people don't like small talks and everything like that, but I
I
think
find it really
it
hard. I find it really hard. Like, I can't
yeah,
talk more than like couple of sentence. It is really hard for me. Like, so currently we are talking the way we're talking, because we know what, like, we already face these things, and it's technical, career oriented, and it's easier to talk because we know about it.
yeah,
That small talk is something I really struggle at.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then, if you want to be a leader, I think small talk is something which builds the charm in the first place, right? So
No,
I will.
I look. I don't think it's totally necessary. No, like
No.
it helps, but I don't think it's necessary. Like like again, it goes back to the same empathy thing. Like if you if you are able to recognize people with different characters,
Mm,
um, and actually respect their talent, um, and their drive, and the way they think, then
mm.
it doesn't really matter if someone's like really straightforward. They just go straight to the problem. You appreciate them for it because it's probably because of that. Maybe they are really high functioning, like high quality driven people. Maybe it's just the way just they are,
That's true.
and I don't think it's like it's necessary that to be able to do that. It helps to actually create a rapport with people. Sometimes some people really feel connected, they might open up, but I don't think it's so totally necessary,
It's true.
that you have to be charming or need to be able to do small talk at all. It's not necessary. It helps, but not necessary.
I completely agree with you. Not everybody loves small talk as well. Like you could
Yeah,
just talk about the stuff and move on.
yeah,
Yeah, I like I struggle in that department, but yeah, there's something like obviously you need to. I'm working on it as we go.
yeah, yeah.
So, anyways, we're almost 1 hour 20 minutes into the conversation. I think, yeah, we stressed it too long, but it was really wonderful conversation, Ujjwal. I really loved the speaking all these things. One last question I had was so you have been working in this industry for a long time. You have worked in multiple types of industry, multiple size of industry, and we have worked with a lot of different people. Somebody
Again,
who
again, you're overselling me, but yeah, thank you.
I mean, like you get work with a lot of different people, right? And if somebody's like, what would be your three most advice that you would give to somebody who's starting as a software engineer, like as a graduate, like three things that you would recommend them, like to work on right now so that they would succeed in the future?
Three. I don't think I can say three. I'm probably gonna
Oh,
say
you
just
could say more. You could say more, but
no.
at least three.
I'll probably just say one. Like I think I'm
Okay,
screwed.
one. What is the one thing like? Okay, let's do one. What's the one thing you would recommend like early career software engineer to focus on?
Okay, I could say one or two things, but let's start with one, right?
Okay.
Uh, I think and it's probably not just going to apply just to software engineering, but maybe to life in general, is to have this like understanding of why something is being done, like why it actually helps like all the time, like from how you pick your career,
Mm,
to how you pick up a programming language, learning a programming language, to how you pick up even a ticket.
mm,
Like the why thing, like as long as you can answer why to sometimes you actually answer why, sometimes you ask why,
mm,
and that actually provides clarity on whether you need, because if you don't know the why,
mm,
two things either can happen. Either you're not going to feel that connected to whatever you're doing, right? And doing a tech lead just created this ticket to solve backlog tech debt, right? But you have absolutely no clue what it actually helps it, the bigger impact of it, right? You're probably not going to be able to do it well. Like you're only really going to be able to be able to do it well. You need to really empathize with the problem. I think maybe I'm using the word empathy too much, but to
I
be able
mean,
to
that's
understand that
that's
problem.
the key skill you need to develop. Like if you don't have, right?
Yeah,
Uh, as you said, like if why, like understanding why it's not applicable on technical thing as well. Like if somebody
yeah,
is behaving, like if somebody was rude to you,
yeah,
rather than being angry and showing the emotion
yeah,
immediately, trying to understand why they are behaving in such a way they are behaving right now
yeah.
is also a key thing, right? So like clear
Exactly.
understanding of trying to get
Yeah,
understanding why.
exactly. Like for example, if someone's like really like rude to you, because maybe I don't know, maybe they did something for a month, 1 month, and they went to demo, and you give them like a bunch of feedback,
Mhm,
and then they didn't like it, because they spend like a lot of time to actually make it perfect, right? And like if you go there and ask why,
mm,
maybe then you might find true answer to it. One of the answers could be like maybe there wasn't enough collaboration at the start of the project, like I mentioned. So you guys can start on like align on the approach. Maybe there was something else bogging the bugging the project or bugging the person who do it. Maybe there were like really complications with the project. Maybe they had to take a lot of trade-offs when delivering the project. So they had to have some level of trade-offs on the quality side of things. So only when you know why, then you can actually truly really know, understand why things are certain. Obviously we wouldn't be able to understand everything, right? But to have that ability of why, what actually happens, like now you find true purpose of everything, right? For
Mm.
example, actually helps with a lot of different things. Like someone asks you, oh, we need to really solve this bug, right? Coming back to the same thing, you ask why, whether it's really necessary, what are the numbers, what's the quantifiable impact. All of these things are somewhat related to the why question, right?
Yeah.
um, that actually you might not even have to solve the problem. Maybe there's a workaround for it, um, actually, so either of this is right. You are now, either you understand why you have to do it,
Mm-hmm.
or you understand that thing is not worth solving. So actually finds like you find like a higher purpose of
Mm-hmm.
everything, and when you do that, then
Mm-hmm.
you'll actually solve the problem. Like you actually solve the problem really well, or you solving the problems that you think
Root cause of
matters.
it, right?
And then
Help
you can actually,
identify
yeah.
root cause of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, root cause. Yeah, that's another way to put it. Yeah, that's one advice.
Hmm.
Uh, the other advice is obviously having a learning mindset. That's, I
Always be
guess,
learning.
like yeah, whether that's on the soft skill side or on the technical side. um and it actually goes on quite well with the empathy thing that we talked about it as well, just learning about things, being open minded about it. um I think it's like one of the most foundational things of a good, someone who's actually a good quality like engineer, or someone like really higher like quality engineer, or a higher quality team, like having everyone that's like open-minded about things. It's like one of the most important things. I
Mm.
can't stress how important being open-minded to learning is.
That's true. That's true. Like if you are receptive and coachable, and have a right mindset, and have that soft skill, right? That's the only thing you would ever need to succeed in career
Yeah,
in IT.
yeah, like yeah, I've seen a lot of people who aren't that, didn't have a good technical foundation to work with. They struggled understanding a lot of programming level concepts. um I don't know, maybe forward loops, but then but then over time, like I've seen people grow into really good like
Engineers.
software engineers, just because like they just like they were like really growth oriented, they were like feedback oriented, they were like open to learning. I think that's like one of the most important things. You don't need to know how to like have good programming skills, to be
Mm.
honest, even if you're starting out.
True.
You can just learn over time, like yeah.
Yeah, like at least have some technical knowledge to get you into the company. Because you can't just write
Yeah,
I am like I have that soft skill and people would hire you.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
you
of
can,
course.
people will, but
Yeah,
people who like
some, yeah,
not. That's the hard truth that we face in
yeah,
this world. Like being
yeah,
nice doesn't give you a job.
yeah.
At least have
That,
some technical competency, but when
yeah,
you're
it's,
working.
yeah. I agree. The world's very unfair. Like it's
Yeah.
like a lot of these things that I've mentioned, it might not be that, like it might seem like a lot of these things that very difficult things to sell.
Mm.
It's just the world is changing, the world is evolving. Some of the companies that maybe you're even trying to join, they might not really be open to these ideas or something.
Mm.
And you might have a hard time selling yourself,
Yeah.
saying, hey, I'm an open minded person. But some companies do. Some companies, I don't know, like I think that's like one of those things. Like a lot of the times, I've heard people, "Hi, how do they hire?" And then they say gut feeling. Um, to me, it's really ridiculous. But I get it. I get it, because like sometimes you just like connect with people. Like, oh, maybe they talk really well. And then you're like, oh, I would be comfortable working with that person.
That's
Um,
interesting. Like so, hiring wise, like okay, that is like so. That's an interesting point because you can't just rely on gut feeling. So suppose if I'm charming,
Yeah.
right? I am really well spoken and I don't get nervous too often, and I can be like that magical engineer one who just like lights up the interview and makes it like fancy, right? Oh, like with the tone and enunciations and better pronunciations and all the stuff. But somebody who is an introvert doesn't can't articulate the like they know how to solve it, they would do it much better than anybody else, but they just have hard time speaking in front and making this first impact. Trying to hire based on gut feeling would it is a bad thing to do. Personally, what I think is you would lose good engineers in that process. I think
Yeah.
companies should have a strict benchmark on things that
Yeah.
they should evaluate on,
Yeah.
like not
I,
just.
I, I yeah, I totally agree. I'm 100%. I'm from the same thing. I'll clarify it a little bit.
Mm,
When people say gut paid, they probably don't mean just people who are well spoken.
yeah.
Obviously they take all the factors that you have mentioned into account,
Mm,
but like there are two ways to quantify it, right? Either
mm,
you are like you have a like a scoring scheme,
mm,
and you sort of try to score everyone, maybe 1 to 5, 1 to 10, what it was for you. And then you're like, oh, in order for someone to say senior software engineer, they need this level of competence, at least this level of competency. Like there's that one way to do. Other way is like you just show up, and then you're like, oh, this is a good person.
mm,
Okay, this seems like a good guy. But the time it can be harder is like you now evaluating them against 10 other people. How do you
yeah.
make sure that they are better than the 10 people, or maybe not better, but you think they are better for you than the 10 people? That
Yeah.
I think that is where being like objective and having like a really good set of criteria
Mm,
can help. But yeah, I've heard like people like they take all of this into account, but then
mm,
they don't like score it. You know? They're just like they take all of this
yeah.
into account. They're like, oh, I think he did pretty well. Uh-huh. And some
Yeah.
there are some people are just naturally good at it, you know. So
True.
um,
Like
so
somebody
yeah,
somebody who can, even they don't know the answer, they can talk about it for an minute or 15 minutes, just explaining the things even if they don't know the answer. So,
yeah,
and like the other thing that I kind of found was interview process is broken, right? Interview process is broken.
yeah,
So
100%.
if you are just relying on, if you don't have a strict plan on how to hire, what happens is the day you have like somebody your daughter's birthday and you are like feeling really nice throughout the day, throughout the hiring process, if that comes into account, then I don't know why I did it, but if that comes into account, then and the day when you had a bad day and you were like asking hard questions, that should not happen when you are going on interview. Like
Yeah,
both persons should be getting same question and evaluated based on the same criteria.
yeah,
So
yeah,
having a hard set benchmark really helps on hiring. However, being good at soft skill helps your like hiring chances a lot.
yeah, yeah, yeah. True. Like maybe let's not soft skill. Like if you're like soft skill is probably like a prerequisite for it, to be honest.
Yes, true.
The only time like I think like the only like yeah, I agree. It's very unfair.
Mm,
Like how maybe extroverted people get like better chances than
mm,
introverted people, whether that's climbing on the corporate ladder, getting
mm.
promotions, getting recognized, or to just like being hired by people, hired by companies. I think it's an unfair advantage, and one I sadly we have to be like it's a to be able to play with it. Like it's
Yeah.
just I don't
I,
have anything
I mean,
concrete.
at some point, like if it's a public facing role, then yeah, you want somebody who can make an impact, right? Because example CTO, CEO, or CISO, somebody who speaks to public day to day basis, they need to be well spoken. You can
Yeah,
have somebody's like, oh, I can only explain this PR or architecture in deep depth, but I can't talk to you on a soft skill. That won't help the company. But yeah, that is where like having different tracks for leadership or different
yeah,
tracks for engineers to grow into would help. Like somebody who is an introvert but really good at tech may go to like technical leader, distinguished engineer, principal engineers type of role, whereas somebody who is good at like people's person and somebody who's well spoken can go towards like managerial and more like speaking, like public speaking kind of roles, right?
Yeah.
So it depends on the company. Companies should, like, what I'm trying to say is companies should have this policy where everybody has a room to grow. Like,
Yeah.
not, there should not be a hard ceiling for somebody
Yeah.
just because their quality differs from somebody else.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. It's like that's one of the things that really defines a good company
Mm.
from a bad company is how well you value your people
Mm.
and give them an opportunity to grow. It's a hard problem to solve though. Sometimes they just have like, I don't know, budgets on promotions. And you have like a really good engineering culture, engineering team, and everyone's doing so well, everyone's improving, and you don't
Yeah.
have budget to promote everyone or maybe even all the people. So it's practically it becomes sometimes a difficult problem sometimes. But yeah, like at least if you give, even if you can't promote everyone because you have, I don't know, budget issue, at least
Yeah.
even if you let them grow and they
Mm.
end up moving to a different company, I think it's a really good outcome personally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true. And like there is some kind of like unspoken thing, like when somebody leaves the company, people get angry, or like that should not
Yeah.
happen. You should
No.
feel happy for them.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
yeah, anyways, like it's already 1:40, almost 2 hours, so I think we should wrap it
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ujjwal, for coming today, taking a wonderful time. I really like, thank you so much for spending, like, giving me your weekend. uh
Yeah, no, yeah, no
Really
worries, no
appreciate
worries.
it.
Yeah, yeah. I'll also say it was like really nice. A lot of the things I'd say are actually my opinion, personal opinion. So maybe don't take them. Yeah, like it's a
It's
holy
a
grail or
valuable
something.
advice from somebody
Yeah,
who worked in the industry for 10 years. So it depends
yeah,
on you how you want to take it, right? If you just
yeah.
want to like ignore
Yeah,
it.
these are just these are just my opinion. So it's just do your own, I don't know, due diligence,
Yeah.
and take up what you want to take.
Anyways, thank you so much. I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you next. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thanks, Provis.